Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice Radio. So today, it is time to have a little bit of a look at a new Spiritomb card. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our translation today actually comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet. He's helping us out again. He's a lovely man. As well as the lovely David Hochmann. And as always, when those two chaps agree on a translation, we can be pretty gosh darn sure that it is correct. So, Spiritomb then. This is a good Spiritomb. What it does, well, we started with the basics. 60 HP is low, but it does open up Professor Round's lecture, so it's not too bad. It could be worse. The retreat cost of 1 is manageable, given that the attack is for a single energy. The lack of weakness is lovely. It's very rare that you don't get a Pokemon that's weak. So that's nice. Honestly, you've got 60 HP. So, you know, let's say it was weak to Buzzwole. Jet Punch will get a nice easy one-hit KO. So it's not the end of the world. And being a Darkness type does mean you are hitting weakness on Dawnwing's Necrozma, which could be relevant. Bayonet, I used to see a little bit of play, not so much anymore. And Mimikyu and Gengar, which has been seeing a little bit of play over in Japan. I will bring you that video in the not too distant future, when these new card reveals have, let's say, slowed down a little bit. So, what does it actually do? Well, it's got a really, really interesting ability. And the ability here says that once during your turn, you may put 1 damage counter onto this Pokemon. I know, right? You can put a damage counter onto this Pokemon. Hang on a second. Why would you want to damage your Pokemon? And the answer is, there are a whole bunch of reasons why you would want to damage your Pokemon. Want a slightly weird reason? How about Unknown Damage? Unknown Damage is one of those new Unknown cards. Has been banned and expanded, incidentally, because, you know, broken. And what you can do is win the game if you've got 66 or more damage counters on your Pokemon, and this is in the active. Well, the great news here is that you put a damage counter onto Spiritomb, that gets you 1/66th of the way there. Or, if you want it as a percentage, that puts you 1.5% of the way to victory, which is quite nice. And let's not forget that if you're in the expanded format, you can use Reuniclus to move damage around, maybe onto something like a Reshiram or a Zekrom. And they've got the Outrage attack, which means they do more damage depending on how much damage is on them. They're uses which are frankly rarely going to come off. But one of the uses I think will come off is KOing Spiritomb. Actually using this to KO Spiritomb. Now, if you're against a deck that damages the bench, like the aforementioned Buzzwole, like Tapu Koko, you've got to be kind of careful that you're not getting ready to KO it, and then it gets KO'd by something else and it doesn't do what you want. But the ideal situation here is that you KO this at the right time to put yourself behind on prizes. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, Wassy, why would you want to put yourself behind on prizes? And the answer is extremely simple. We have a whole bunch of cards that do more now when you're behind on prizes. Just yesterday we looked at Fighting Dojo. Fighting Dojo lets any Pokemon with basic fighting energy attached do an extra 10 damage, unless you're behind on prizes, in which case it allows your Pokemon to do an extra 40 damage, which is pretty crazy good. Then we got Counter Energy, which is any 2 energy on a non-EX, non-GX, just so long as you're behind on prizes. We got Counter Gain, which means your attack cost comes down by 1 colorless energy if you're behind on prizes. And we got Counter Capture, which is a free gusting effect if you're behind on prizes. So there's plenty of reasons at the moment you would want to be behind on prizes. And now you can take advantage of that using this Spiritomb. Now, these are niche uses, I'll give you that. Using Reuniclus and Expanded, it's not probably often going to work. Unknown Damage is banned and expanded, and it's not doing great in Standard, and I've just not seen it in Standard. And all this business about KOing your own Spiritomb, that will work, incidentally. That one will work sometimes. Absolutely, it will. You just need to then ask the question of, well, how often will it work? How often will I be able to manipulate my board so that Spiritomb has exactly one damage counter remaining to be KO'd, and then it can self-KO? Remembering, of course, that it's not just that you want to be able to perfectly self-KO it, it is that you need to do so at the perfect time. KO this on the turn you've got a counter catcher, or on the turn that you're going to be playing an Alolan Ninetales, for instance. So it is useful and it will work, but we end up with the question of, will it work often enough to actually make it worth playing with? And then we're into slightly more awkward situations. We can also look at the new Kartana, which is going to be coming out in the same set, Unbroken Bonds. It does 130 for one basic energy, just so long as you've got exactly 4 prizes remaining. So again, it's not always going to happen, but if you've got 5 prizes remaining and then you can self-KO with Spiritomb, that can give you a huge advantage by getting this attack with Kartana. This is one of those really weird abilities, which is going to have a lot of niche uses, and it's going to come out here and there in ways that, frankly, we weren't really expecting. But there is a more specific use, and that comes in with the attack. 1 Darkness Energy, the beautifully named Cry in Anguish. Terrifying. 10 damage. This attack does 30 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. This is going to be the more regular use for Spiritomb here. And this is a good use for Spiritomb here. Essentially, if you've got 1 damage counter on, you do 40. 2, you do 70. 3, you do 100. 4, you do 130. Now, when you've got 4 on and do 130, that's when it starts getting really relevant. Because all of a sudden, you got these non-GXs like White Kyurem, for instance. Not Granbull, incidentally, because Granbull does resist darkness. But there's a whole bunch of 130 HP Pokemon, non-GX Buzzwole's another one, that will go down here. And this is a point at which you can start just about getting some GX KOs. So if you've got 4 damage counters on, you're doing 130, Choice Band 160, Shrine of Punishment 170, and that means that you will get the odd GX like Tapu Lele. But really here, the ideal is getting 5 damage counters on. And if you can get 5 damage counters on, then you're up at 160, which means with a Choice Band, that's 190, Buzzwole. Shrine of Punishment is 200, Lycanroc. That's when we're really starting to get up to happy territory here. Now, there are, of course, other ways to do this. You can just damage your own Pokemon. I really like this in a Malamar deck with the Giratina from Lost Thunder, because the Giratina, when it attacks, you have to put 4 damage counters onto one of your Pokemon. So you can put the 4 damage counters onto Spiritomb here, and you're already hitting 130 next turn, except you're not, because if you put 4 damage counters on with Giratina, you can then put the 5th damage counter on with Spiritomb, and immediately have 5 damage counters and be hitting 150. There's all kinds of awkwardness here in that if you put 4 damage counters on, your opponent can use a Tapu Koko, or a Buzzwole, or a Latios, etc., to get a KO on their turn, probably while also hitting the active, and that's going to be super annoying. But there's not a huge amount that we can do about that, unfortunately. It's a risk you've got to take. What you do, essentially, is just make sure that you're not doing this on a turn where you believe your opponent's going to be able to hit your bench for 20 damage. Or you play this along with something like the Mew we looked at yesterday with Bench Barrier that will block all those Pokemon I previously mentioned, but given that Giratina is one of your own Pokemon and it is damage counters, not damage, will mean that it won't block Giratina. That is an option, linked to the Mew video in the description, incidentally. And especially if you're hitting for weakness. I mean, take Mimikyu and Gengar. You need to be hitting essentially 120 to get a one-hit KO here. So if you can get 3 damage counters onto Spiritomb, and then whack a Choice Band on there, you're actually doing 130, double with weakness is 260, and all of a sudden that's a one-hit KO on Gengar and Mimikyu for 3 prizes. And that is seeing play over in Japan. That is a pretty good card that is seeing a bit of success. It's an awkward card to use, don't get me wrong, and there will be plenty of times where you're trying to manipulate it and it goes wrong. But the fact that you can use it to activate these if you're behind on prizes or if you've got X number of prizes remaining cards, and the fact that you can use this as a decent attacker means that I'm giving it 4 Wassies. It is a supremely interesting card, and I know that it won't always work, but let's not forget there are plenty of Pokemon out there, there are plenty of decks out there that can't really hit the bench. And against decks that can't hit the bench, you can essentially just do your thing and manipulate this as much as you like. I like this very much indeed, and I think it is extremely interesting. But I would very much like to know what you think about this. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays for some more Wassie action. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.